Days of Heaven, an analysis of realist lighting. When audiences are captivated by the golden backlight of dusk in Days of Heaven, or feel uneasy at the shadows across Hannibal Lecter's face in The Silence of the Lambs, what they experience comes not only from performance or narrative, but also from the organization of light itself. Yet in many discussions, cinematic lighting is still regarded merely as a technical device, as though it were only a supplementary component serving visual presentation. In reality, lighting is a visual language system with its own distinct grammar. Torben Krag Grodal argues that variations in lighting interact with the viewer's physiological rhythms. Samsa Huttonen's EEG experiments demonstrate that different directions of facial lighting subconsciously influence emotional judgment, and Mustafa Matbuli's research points out a significant relationship between light color and audience perception of character. Together, these studies reveal that lighting is not simply a method of visual presentation, but an active participant in shaping audience perception. Thus, the effects achieved by many classic films can often be traced back to the organization of light. The aesthetic evolution of cinematic lighting has never followed a single linear path, but rather two parallel and intertwined traditions: the realist pursuit of natural lighting and the expressionist pursuit of stylized lighting. These traditions differ fundamentally in both lighting design and emotional effect. This essay focuses on the lighting design of Days of Heaven, a film grounded primarily in realist lighting, and examines both its lighting methods and the effects these methods produce throughout the film. The central principle of realist lighting is motivated light. Illumination must appear to originate from a believable source within the world of the film: sunlight, windows, lanterns, or candles. This tradition can be traced back to the visual peak of silent cinema in the 1920s, when many films achieved an elegance through extensive use of natural light that was later diminished or lost during the sound era. However, realism does not simply mean using no lights, as studies of lighting aesthetics have demonstrated. Cinematographers working within realist traditions often challenge the audience's assumptions about how reality actually looks. True realist lighting is therefore a form of highly controlled naturalism, a method that respects the logic of physical light sources while carefully manipulating timing, light quality, and direction in order to create images that feel both believable and emotionally expressive. Directed by Terrence Malick, Days of Heaven tells the story of a tragic love triangle among migrant workers on a Midwestern wheat farm in the early 20th century. Yet the narrative itself functions merely as a hanger upon which the film's true achievement is built: its cinematography. Through imagery, Malick evokes extraordinary landscapes and deeply emotional themes. The film's lighting became legendary because it pursued realism with an almost obsessive commitment, ultimately reaching a profoundly poetic aesthetic. Cinematographer Nestor Almendros won the Academy Award for his work on the film. The Wheatfield Dinner at sunset, one of the film's most iconic scenes, depicts the protagonists and farm workers sharing a meal in a wheat field at dusk. The setting sun shines diagonally from behind the characters, turning the wheat golden while outlining the figures with radiant edges. Facial details recede into warm shadows. No artificial fill light was used in this sequence. Almendros chose to shoot during the magic hour, approximately 20 minutes before sunset, when the sun sits low on the horizon and produces warm low-angle backlighting. He avoided using reflectors or fill lights to brighten the actors' faces, relying entirely on the faint ambient skylight diffused across the shadow side. The backlight gives the wheat a translucent texture, making every stalk appear illuminated from within. Although the faces are underexposed, warm shadow details remain visible, creating an effect somewhere between silhouette and partial silhouette. Most importantly, viewers cannot fully read the characters' facial expressions. Instead, emotion is communicated through posture, outline, and atmosphere. Light transforms the characters from specific individuals into visual archetypes, workers drifting across the landscape rather than psychologically transparent protagonists. Window light in the mansion interior In another scene, the farmer sits alone inside his mansion. The room is dimly lit, and the sole source of illumination comes from a nearby window. Light strikes one side of his face, while the other disappears completely into darkness. Almendros famously stated that period films should use less light, and light should come from windows. In this scene, all artificial interior lights were removed. The actor was positioned carefully near the window to achieve the ideal side lighting angle, while the deeper parts of the room were left entirely unlit. The side light creates a strong contrast between illumination and shadow across the face. This Rembrandt-style lighting produces a dual effect. On one level, it suggests the character's inner division and hidden emotions. On another, the large areas of darkness create spatial depth, emphasizing the oppressive loneliness of the mansion. The viewer's gaze is directed toward the illuminated half of the face, while the shadowed half becomes a space of ambiguity and imagination. Firelight and lanterns in the night, scenes after the locust plague, characters gather around campfires or walk through the fields carrying lanterns. Flames flicker across their faces, causing shadows to shift constantly. This approach marked a revolutionary moment in film lighting history. Almendros rejected conventional artificial lighting designed to imitate firelight and instead insisted on using real propane flames and lanterns as the only sources of illumination. The flames possessed a color temperature of approximately 1800 K, far warmer than the standard 3200 K or 5600 K lighting used in cinema, and their intensity and direction changed naturally and continuously. The movement of real firelight creates dynamic shadows that artificial lighting cannot perfectly replicate. Faces appear to breathe with the flames, and audiences subconsciously recognize the authenticity of this physical interaction between light and movement. More importantly, the firelight illuminates primarily the lower portions of the face, often leaving the eyes in darkness. This produces an atmosphere that feels mysterious, primitive, and deeply unsettling, visually foreshadowing the tragedy toward which the narrative is moving. The overall impact of the lighting style. Having examined these individual scenes, we can now consider the broader effects of the film's lighting design as a whole. 1. Creating a sense of time and transience. Because the film relies heavily on natural light, the changing qualities of daylight, from the cool tones of dawn to harsh midday sunlight and warm sunset backlight, are preserved throughout the film. These variations create not only visual rhythm, but also a sense of impermanence. The audience leaves the film remembering not simply a story, but a temporal experience shaped by light itself. 2. Establishing spatial and emotional distance, the lighting strategy progresses systematically. Exterior backlit silhouettes, interior window side lighting, and nighttime firelight together construct a layered visual space. More importantly, the lighting consistently maintains a certain distance from the characters. Their faces are rarely shown in complete clarity, and this visual distance becomes emotional distance, giving the film the texture of memory or dream. 3. Unifying realism and poetry. This is perhaps the film's most significant aesthetic achievement. On the level of lighting logic, the film remains faithful to realist principles. Every light source has a clear physical origin. Yet on the level of emotional impact, the imagery becomes profoundly poetic. Wheat fields flow like molten gold under backlight, and faces dissolve into warm halos of shadow and illumination. The film demonstrates that extreme realism in lighting can paradoxically lead to the deepest emotional and poetic truth. In Days of Heaven, light is neither a mere technical device nor an abstract expressionist symbol. It functions instead as a visual language with a dual identity, grounded in the logic of realist illumination while simultaneously reaching toward poetic transcendence. As the Museum of Modern Art once described the film, it hovers just beyond reach, mysterious, beautiful, and very likely a masterpiece. This elusive quality emerges precisely from the film's organization of light. Under Almendros' cinematography, light becomes not only a tool for seeing, but also a medium for feeling. It convinces viewers that this world once truly existed, while simultaneously reminding them that it can exist only within cinema's fragile interplay of light and shadow. From a broader perspective, The lighting practice of Days of Heaven proves that realism and poetry are not opposites. On the contrary, the most rigorous form of visual realism may ultimately lead to the deepest form of emotional truth. This may be the essential value of cinematic lighting as a visual grammar system. It is not merely a supplementary technique serving the image, but one of the fundamental languages of film itself.